We're here with Emeka Nkwuo, one of my buddies, who's associate attorney at Lomurro Law. Emeka, how you doing, buddy?
How you doing, Chris? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man. So just quick overview. So what kind of law do you practice? How long you been doing it? Just so that people can get a feel for what we have going on.
I've been practicing law for 10 years. I do mainly criminal defense and a little bit of personal injury. When I graduated from law school, I started at the public defender's office. About a year and a half ago, I transitioned to a law firm where I still do criminal defense, but I also do a little bit of personal injury cases as well.
You realize you couldn't make enough money to survive being a public defender, right?
Yeah. Well, you know what? I thought that it was the time. One of my buddies was an attorney over at Lomurro, and he's actually a partner over at Lomurro, and he recruited me to go over there, and it was an offer that I couldn't refuse. So.
To pull the old mafia line, right?
Yeah. But I'm glad that I did it. I'm glad that I did it. I'm very happy there.
Yeah, obviously I know a lot of the people there, one being my brother, who's an attorney, and great people. I mean, you ended up in a good spot.
Yeah, that's true.
So I get a bunch of questions that I put out on Instagram and LinkedIn, and just some of my friends that text me back on, I'm doing an Ask an Attorney session. Like, what would you want to know? And I got a ton of questions. It was really cool, like just hearing these random questions that people have. Like I said to you before, some of them were pretty incriminating, so I didn't want to include those ones. You probably figured out.
I might have to plead the fifth on a couple of them, but I'll give it a go.
All right, so we'll do rapid fire. The best you want to answer them.
Sure.
We talked about, so like attorneys are good at being vague, so be vague where you have to be. But
Sure.
So the first one is, so somebody is super guilty that you're defending, not just guilty, super guilty, whatever that means. So I guess if you know somebody, there's just the evidence is so stacked up, or they've already, admitted guilt. Like, what's your strategy for your client in that situation?
So at that point, if somebody is super guilty, it really becomes about protecting their rights and making sure that that person has a fair trial. I'll give you an example. So say that the police pull over one of my clients, they search his car illegally, and they find either a gun, drugs, something of that nature. If I could establish in court that that search was illegal, I could get the evidence suppressed. That means that it's thrown out. And what that does is that it protects everybody's constitutional rights, right? Because you want to live, it holds the police accountable, it holds the government accountable, and I want to live in a society where, I believe in the Fourth Amendment, where people are free from unlawful searches and seizures. And I also believe that it's the government's burden to prove somebody's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. And if they can't do it, that person should go free, because, this isn't Game of Thrones where you just assume somebody's guilty and you chop off their head. Because every so often you get situations like, the Central Park 5, where you think that the evidence is overwhelming, but it turns out not to be. Another example of that is Duke lacrosse. So it's really about protecting people's rights and ensuring that everybody has a fair trial. And the Constitution has to apply for it to work. And I believe strongly in this. It needs to apply to everybody equally. So, you really just are defending their rights at that point.
So when you said going to trial, like how many cases actually make it to trial versus like how many deals are just made behind the scenes before it even gets there?
Oh man, very, very few cases get to trial. I want to say probably between 95 to 98% of cases work out before a trial, whether it be a plea deal, whether it be dismissed on a motion of the prosecutor, but it's very rare for a case to go all the way the distance to go to a jury trial. And the reason for that is because there's a risk. There's a high risk. A lot of the times it's, look, you could plead guilty and get probation, or if you lose trial, you're going to get 5 years in prison. So a lot of times it works out that way. Sometimes we're able to establish somebody's innocence, so the case is dismissed by the prosecutor before then. Sometimes it's sent back to municipal court. But yeah, it's very, very rare for a case to actually end up in a jury trial.
That's so interesting because you just see like on TV, like Law and Order, like you just see everything goes to trial. So you just think like commit a crime, get a lawyer, go to court, and have your day in court. But it doesn't sound like that even happens most of the time. So you're spending most of your time on the phone meeting with prosecutors versus actually going into court, right?
Right. And a lot of the times it's determining what's the appropriate punishment, right? If somebody gets pulled over and they're caught with drugs, what should happen to them? Should that person go to jail? Should that person get probation? Should that person pay a fine? There's no real book that you could open that determines what the appropriate outcome is. So you want to humanize the person to the prosecutor. And a lot of it is getting what the appropriate punishment for that crime is. If it's something that you can't try, the person's guilty, they're on video, something of that nature. So yeah, a lot of my time is spent working with the prosecutor. And sometimes when the prosecutor feels that there's issues with the case and they can't prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, or they may lose at trial, they'd be willing to downgrade the charges or come off it substantially.